So now we're going back now to supplemental 37C. Can you read the item, please?
Under Chairman Doe, discussion of proper use of board staff when conducting constituent outreach outside of district.
All right, we have any speakers?
No, we don't.
Okay. Colleagues, I brought this item because I'm actually kind of confused now as far as our practice, and I don't want to use the word policy, maybe even policy on this board. This is my 4th year on this board, and Supervisor Spitzer, you remember the first couple of years I was on this board, district prerogative was something you were very strict about. I remember being invited to speak at an Irvine Chamber of the mic is on, yeah. Irvine Chamber of Commerce, and I spoke because I was invited, but it was in your district, and you had some issue with that because it was in your district. So we, up until now, I feel like the 5 of us kind of been living with that understanding. And it was kind of that way for the first 3 years. And then this is my 4th year. And then this year, it just seems like you have been everywhere, right? In every district, practically. And sometimes I would see, you know, postings of your staff here from the supervisor's office going with you to these events, Chamber of Commerce, city events, cities that are outside of your district. And so this item seeks to address really 3 issues. And I want to identify them so that we can address them in turns. One is, do we still have district prerogative? Do we still respect, and I know this is not a legal thing, because as county supervisors, we have freedom of speech, and we have freedom, just as an American, to go wherever we want to go, right? But do we respect that anymore? Is that something that we want to live by? Because if not, let's have an understanding right here, right now. 2 is, when is the use of our own county staff appropriate to go to events outside of our district, outside of the area that we represent, okay, and use county staff? And when does that become improper? And I don't want to use the word campaign, because I'm not here for that. But when is it improper because we are no longer just reaching out to constituents that we represent? And then further out is, if we believe that we have county-wide reach as supervisors, meaning we no longer are confined to our districts, then what does that do to our event budgets in terms of what we can spend to reach out? How do we define constituents then, right? In terms of mailers or events or tele-town halls, things that we would use our event budget to organize. So those are the 3 topics that I would like us to discuss so that we can be all on the same page, because I know I speak for a couple other supervisors here that sometimes we don't know when that is proper and when it's not. So, and I'll open it up to the floor. It's not confined only to you. I'm just, as an example, that's some of the things that I've seen, and if maybe you can clarify the policy for me so that we can understand.
You talking to me?
Yes.
Well, I mean, first of all, I appreciate you agendizing the discussion, and I appreciate you laying out some of the issues. So I'm not sure you remember my State of the County speech in 2015 when I was chairman. I really made a point of the fact that that whole concept of having this district parochialism was not good for our county. In fact, I talked about making sure we invited each other to other events and outreach and things like that. And in 2015, as chairman, I started going out to all over the county.
As chair, sure.
Well, Well, chair doesn't have any more power than any other
Well,
supervisor.
technically, you're the face of the county, so you can be invited to speak on the state of the county. But remember, when you were chair, and that's when I spoke at the Irvine Chamber of Commerce, and you went to me and said, why are you in my district? You did that. So remember that conversation?
Well, you're accusing me of something, and I don't remember it.
No, well, okay. I
Okay,
didn't
I'm
make
trying
it
to
up.
answer your questions,
Yeah,
okay.
I didn't make it up. It was a Irvine Chamber of Commerce, and when you spoke to me about that, I asked you, well, I was invited to speak, what would you like me to do? Turn them down, and you didn't answer, but you did confront me on the fact that I went into your district to speak.
I'm not, you want to be confrontational, I don't want to be confrontational. I'm
no.
trying to walk through my thought process, okay? So, a lot of stuff has happened in the last 3 years that have really changed the landscape in this county, in my opinion, on regionalism. I mean, let's take homelessness as a good example, right? It's on the front of our minds, something we're dealing with all the time. One of the biggest things that's changed in the conversation about homelessness in our county is it's not going to be resolved district by district. It's going to be resolved regionally. And so, for example, I went back in anticipation of this and looked at some of the events that I've attended or we've attended. And, for example, the San Clemente State of the City on April 5th with Tim Brown as the mayor, in his PowerPoint, he talks about OCTA projects. He talks about homelessness. He talks about the cost of sheriff's department, how expensive it's getting. He talks about the OCTA 2018 long-term transportation plan. Of course, San Clemente is hypersensitive about the 241 extension, which I'll have to vote on, and it's a major issue at the TCA right now. So there's major issues going on in this county that we need, I feel absolutely, in my elected official capacity, whether I'm on OCTA or TCA, which I sit on those boards statutorily, you know that. I need information. I'll give you another example. Seal Beach is suing OCTA, or maybe it's resolved, but over the sound wall and the expansion of the 405. So having communication with those elected officials in Seal Beach to have information to me is certainly very important. And then, and I could give a lot of examples. Let's take Dana Point Harbor. Dana Point has obviously raised the issue now whether the Orange County Sheriff's Department is getting too expensive to patrol Dana Point Harbor. And I know I read some comments that she made in the newspaper, but Supervisor Steele knows when the FAA had a town hall in Newport Beach. Where was that, Michelle? At like their senior center, library or something? No, it wasn't at City Hall. It was like at some senior, anyway. I went down into Newport Beach to participate in that FAA town hall because the FAA was there and they were making presentations and I had constituents going. So, if you go all the way back to the bankruptcy, and I was here and I got elected in that class of 1996, one of the biggest problems in the county at that time is the Board of Supervisors thought way too myopically. They were too narrow in their focus. And today, the reason I'm all over the county is because we're being confronted, and I'm sitting and being asked to vote and make decisions all the time on major regional issues. And I feel like it's absolutely critical to my role to do that. I mean, last Saturday, you were on the riverbed on your bicycle, riding, and you posted on social. I mean, I saw it. I am a friend of yours on Facebook. And you said, I'm riding my bike on the Santa Ana riverbed. I was so proud of Orange County staff who transitioned over 1,000 people off the riverbed and into more humane and safe area. The riverbed is now open for the public, 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. You really think I'm going to make you or your staff call me on the phone and go, hey, we're going to ride down the river trail in your district? Of course not. You're welcome to go in the district anytime.
Regional and countywide issues, grant you that. But when I'm looking at, like the Aliso Viejo Christmas tree lighting, right? The Dana Point Thanksgiving.
Yeah, Dave
Turkey
Harrington
Trot,
invited me to that.
Dana Point Wells Parade. I mean, don't want to speak for Supervisor Bartlett, but I'm citing some examples
Yeah.
where we're now going into districts that are not related to a function we serve as supervisor. I get, as OCTA, we probably have to go to wherever that we need to address, the impact of the 405, the 55, the 22. So that would take us all over the county. I get that. But some of the examples I
Well, let's
cited-
take Aliso Viejo. I mean, Dave Harrington, the mayor of Aliso Viejo, invited me. I sit on fire authority with him.
Oh, if we go by association and serving on board, we can make that argument anywhere. So let's hear from Supervisor Bartlett.
Okay, so in looking at a couple things, so I think it was about a year or two ago, I wasn't able to attend. I was invited to attend an event with the president of Chapman University, and I wasn't able to attend, so I sent one of my staff members. And Supervisor Spitzer called up my staff member and said, don't you ever come into my district again, either the supervisor or staff members unless you get my approval.
Please.
And so that was...
Before you make an
Supervisor, no, you can't confront both of us as being wrong here. I mean, we're telling you what we experienced.
Any
So-
supervisor is welcome anywhere in the county or their staff at any time, period. That's my point.
Well,
Anytime.
I think we need to set some guidelines, so you got after my staff member. But when you talk about specific events, there's no reason for one supervisor to go to a tree lighting ceremony in somebody else's district. Now, if we're working on some regional issues and we all want to work together in each other's districts, that's fine. But when you start taking projects or things that are district-specific and you start overriding a supervisor in another district and stepping on toes, it gets confusing for the residents, first of all, as to who represents them. And also, the district supervisor is working closely with, for instance, in San Clemente, I'm working very closely with Mayor Brown on issues relating to regional mobility and transportation that other supervisors don't know about. So I can't have supervisors coming into my district and start working with the mayor and others within the city of, say, San Clemente, and perhaps working on something, not knowing the full picture, working on something that could be construed as misleading or conflicting. So I think it's really appropriate for the supervisor in his or her district to really take charge and take the lead on things. And certainly if they want to invite in other supervisors to work on a regional issue or a project, by all means, but invite the other supervisor in instead of having supervisors start stepping on each other's toes in other districts. We need to be respectful here, and Laguna Niguel is a prime example relating to the homelessness issue. We basically agreed out of the meeting a couple of weeks ago. Well, we retracted our vote, but we were looking at 3 feasibility locations. And I attended a 4-hour meeting at the city of Laguna Niguel on a particular evening, and unbeknownst to me, Supervisor Spitzer showed up to speak at that meeting, saying he's going to be the champion of keeping out the homeless from Laguna Niguel. But you also stated at the meeting, and really it was fear-mongering, and that's certainly not appreciated at a meeting when at Laguna Niguel you were stating that, all the homeless are going to come to Laguna Niguel because they're not going to be at Irvine or Huntington Beach. And then in Irvine, you said they're coming from Laguna Niguel and Huntington to Irvine. So I think we have to be respectful of each other's districts, and we've got to set some guidelines. And I thought we had guidelines in place a long time ago, and we were respectful. But for some reason, this particular year, everything has sort of hit the fan, and it's a free-for-all. And we really can't operate that way as a cohesive body, because we all want to work together. But we have to be respectful to understand each other's districts and be respectful of letting the supervisor in that district have his or her individual prerogative to take the lead on certain things. And if you want to invite in other supervisors from time to time, then that's great.
Vice Chair Nelson?
Well, I'll just add this. Obviously, there's exceptions to every rule. My kids go to Lutheran High. I don't show up at the Orange City Council meetings, nor would I ever, and nor would I suggest there to be any reason that I would ever do that unless I had checked with the local supervisor first. But we send a little player of the game awards to the high school because my kids go there. But the idea that we've got members of our body showing up at city council meetings in other people's districts, inflaming the crowd, not only is outrageous, it's totally inappropriate. All it does is divide this board. There is only one reason to go do that. One. It's all campaign related. And if that crap doesn't stop, I absolutely will vote to cut the budget, which would be the staff of anybody that pulls that stuff again. I'm tired of it. We should never have to have this conversation, ever. It's purposeful. I was embarrassed when I saw the video down in Laguna Niguel. I can't imagine getting to a point with any of you where I would support someone showing up in your district, stirring up a bunch of lies and nonsense just to get their local residents upset at one of my colleagues. And believe me, I'm human too, right? You know, we can all upset each other. But if we just start crossing that line and it's a free-for-all, this place will denigrate really fast. That would be a real shame. But if I saw anyone else do that, I would feel just as strong. It's not a personality-driven thing. It's so far over the line it shouldn't need to be explained, just how absolutely outrageous it is for someone from the 3rd District to be at a council meeting in Costa Mesa or Fullerton or anywhere else. That's just, there is no excuse, and making one would just be digging the hole deeper. That stuff needs to stop. And all of the, public stuff, concerts in the park, all that stuff all summer, don't be sending me a request to get on the stage, because I don't get on the stage. It's not the way I behave. You can all do what you want. But I think we all need to look in the mirror and kind of check the personalities. These jobs are big enough. We all have a district. Serve your district. Stay out of everybody else's. And if you can't, it's going to get really awkward, because I'll make the motion and we'll just start making people a one-man show around here. And we'll let the chips fall where they may. That'd be a really sad place to go. Totally the most ridiculous response I can imagine, right up until it's met with the most ridiculous behavior. So if that isn't clear enough, then forgive me. But I hope we never have to relive what I relived in the last couple of weeks, actually having to witness it and knowing what the reason was for doing it, because neither were comfortable for me.
Supervisor Spitzer?
Thank you very much. I mean, look, guys, you're not being honest. Behind my back, Supervisor Bartlett, you negotiated a museum plan for the Tustin base with one of your biggest supporters who built the headlands down in Dana Point. Unbeknownst to me, you were negotiating to try to do a land use decision, and you were meeting with city council members in the city of Tustin. Supervisor Nelson, you had been meeting with then Mayor Wagner when he got elected about the 100 acres, and you all had been having conversations with elected officials in my districts regarding land use for a very long time. So, the fact that you all are acting like I don't have the right to go into anywhere I want. I can go into a city council and express my point of view. And I was the no vote. I was the only no vote on this board to challenge the pop-up tents in 3 cities. So, the fact of the matter is, I have every right to express my point of view throughout this county on particular issues, especially when it affects my votes. If you really want to draw that line and say, okay, we're just going to have this bright line drawn through this geofence of our districts, then stop negotiating 100 acres behind my back or trying to develop the Tustin base behind my back. I mean, Andrew, we were in closed session when we bought Anita Street. And we came out and we reported it. One of the things I implored upon you, to everybody about Anita Street, is that we did not have an operation plan. And when we came out and approved that 5-0, my item 3rd district, I didn't say a word because we had agreed that we were going to buy it and we did not want to upset the city of Orange or any of the businesses along Anita Street because we didn't have an operating plan. The very next day, after we agreed we wouldn't really publicize it, you called a press conference on Anita Street. And here's a picture of a building in my district with my city. And as a result, the city council sent a scathing letter to you, Mr. Chairman, the next day. And they said, quote, in a press conference, one day after the acquisition plans for the use of property were significantly detailed. However, to our knowledge, there's been no substantial discussions related to these details between the city and the county. So after we agreed on a project in my district to let me handle it and to really work with the city to develop an operating plan, you called a press conference, you put up a picture, and you brought Dan Young, you brought Susan Price and Richard Sanchez, and you started talking about how we're going to operate Anita Street after we agreed we weren't going to talk about it. And then you got a really nasty gram letter from Mark Murphy and Fred Whitaker. So again, guys, you don't want me to speak out on public policy issues in this county where I have every right to, but you're talking and deciding land use issues, and then, okay, you talked about the bike trail. Well, how's that an exception? You're in my district with staff. You're no problem with me, but somehow you want to define that? How do you want to define whether you can go on the bike trail in the 3rd district? I don't care. Of course you should be able to go there. You don't have to call me.
We can sit here and split hair and make a distinction, but if you don't see the difference between 100 acres, which is a significant revenue source for the county, it's a county project, and Anita Street wasn't the press conference wasn't about Anita Street alone. It was about a mental health system in the county, and in that it was discussed together with the courtyard, with Kramer, and Anita is just one more piece of the overall plan. And guess what? I am on the ad hoc, on the mental health ad hoc. So therefore, and as chair of this board, I'm entitled to talk about that. And I wish you would listen to the entire press conference, because in it, I stressed repeatedly that we still need an operational plan. And that I cited the good work you did at Kramer to show that until we can assure the city that we will be good neighbors, that we won't just operate a facility without any plan. When it comes to, I think, projects that are countywide, that is regional in nature, and the riverbed goes through, I would at least 3 of our supervisors on this board here, including my district. So what, I'm confined to one section of the riverbed? I mean, it's all the same.
Of course not.
But there's but there's a big difference between that and going to a Christmas tree lighting and a city council meeting in somebody else's district, Supervisor Spitzer. I believe it was Supervisor Bartlett next.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So when you talk about the 85 acres, we had one informal meeting about a concept, and that was in Conference Room A. We did have members from Tustin there, but Supervisor Spitzer, you were there as well. And it was just to propose a concept. And then at that point, I let you sort of take the lead and work with the potential developer. And I know that you and Sanford Edward have had a number of occasions to meet and discuss the project. So it's not as though anything was being done, behind your back. But when you talk about things like the Doheny Blues Festival last year, I was walking into my booth at the Doheny Blues Festival, and I had a presentation on stage to the promoters, and I had to walk by this booth, and it had Todd Spitzer 3rd District on it, and that booth was on my way to my booth. And
It was
so,
a drowning prevention task force.
yes,
Lisa.
look at this and tell me, what does that look like?
It's still the drowning, it's the
All people-
countywide effort on drowning.
Well, all people could read is Todd Spitzer, 3rd District. So what I'm saying is we have to be respectful. If you wanted to attend, if you had called me and said, I'd like to promote drowning prevention, like to be there, and I think we discussed it after this occurred, that in the future you would not have your Todd Spitzer 3rd District banner in the back of the booth because it's not necessarily appropriate. We're promoting drowning prevention as opposed to a supervisor. But I think we need to work on a cooperative basis. We all want to work with each other collaboratively. But when you have supervisors that don't discuss things in advance and just appear in a district, it's not courtesy. And we want to be courteous to each other and working collaboratively as well. So we, if we have to, we'll have to set some guidelines. But I think it's a matter of common sense and good practice. And hopefully we can adhere to that in the future.
Supervisor Spitzer, but before you start, can we also identify our discussion into one of the three areas that I cited? First is district prerogative, which I believe is just nothing more than an honor code that we follow, because there's no law that's going to prohibit us from going anywhere we want to go. But the second one that's more critical to me is the use of county staff at these events that are outside of our district, especially when it's not related directly to some function that we serve on some board and commission. I think that's an important decision that we have to make here, and at some point, I'm going to ask County Council to opine on that. Supervisor Spitzer.
Yeah, so let's talk about the Tet Parade, Tet Festival. The Tet Parade. You're not the only supervisor that you probably have the most significant Vietnamese American community in your district, certainly, right? But I have a very large population of Asian Americans in Irvine, for example, including Vietnamese, all over my district. So under what theory, is that a countywide event? Is the Tet Festival a countywide event? Does any supervisor have to ask your permission to be in the Tet Parade under your theory?
I don't see how that is similar to a Christmas tree lighting. That's a nonprofit.
It's a festivity.
I
It's
know.
celebrating Tet.
Right, but I don't own TED, nor does the city of Westminster. It's a nonprofit that put on that parade. I don't know why it would fall on me to give you permission or not.
So I'm just saying, so you believe that anybody could attend Tet?
Yes,
Okay. But you think a tree lighting ceremony in the city has a distinction?
absolutely, because the TED Festival is a regional event. It's not targeted to any particular city. It's not marketed as the city of Westminster, right? Put on by the city council.
Okay, what about Veterans Day at the Orange County Fairgrounds, when Supervisor Nelson has his pop-up staffed by Spurnack, and he's giving away shirts and cigars? Does he have to get permission of Supervisor Bartlett to go to the Orange County Fairgrounds?
That's not in my district.
And Supervisor Steele, sorry, I was looking at you, Lisa. Sean, you've been giving away cigars and T-shirts at the Veterans event with OCEA for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, as long as I can remember. Do you ask Supervisor Steele permission to go to the fairgrounds?
Well, Supervisor Steele wasn't always here, but no, and I also, as you may have noticed, refused to get on the stage and take any credit, because of course I'm there to serve veterans, not to brag up my own stats and take credit for anything. So other than that, no, I just go and serve people and give stuff away. That's true.
Okay, so what do you want to do on that? It's Veterans Day.
It's a county Veterans Day event, so yeah, it is a regional event at a regional facility. And again, I don't get on the stage and take credit for anything. I don't have a mic in my hand. But if there's a regional Alzheimer's walk for the county of Orange, I don't think anybody's worked up over that. That's not the same as standing up at an official city council meeting and railing one of your colleagues.
Okay, so at least that's your upset, which I clearly understand.
Well,
Showing up that way, hold on, let me finish.
upset's just different than pointing out a distinction.
No, but my point is, you're talking about events, and you're trying to distinguish between regional significance versus, there's a distinction now. We've agreed the Tet Parade is in Supervisor Doe's district, but it's not going to require permission because it's a regional event. But the Aliso Viejo tree lighting is not a regional event, and therefore it would require permission.
Who attends that tree lighting?
I go to a lot of tree lightings in the county.
And they're all put on usually attended by the city council. Right.
Well, Dave Harrington asked me to come. I was more than happy to oblige. He's a friend of mine. I'm just saying, so if you want to have somebody draft it, where you can and cannot go, we're going to start talking about what is regionally significant, what is not regionally significant. So At the Fashion Island, I guess the menorah or the tree lighting at Fashion Island, is that regional because it's put on by the shopping mall? And that attracts people from all over the county? You're telling me that only people from Aliso Viejo go to the Aliso Viejo tree lighting? Are you sure?
That's,
Because I saw people from all over the county there, at least South County.
to me, it's common sense
Well, let me ask you, you went,
and
I think,
and good judgment.
I think you did the Pledge of Allegiance at the Orange County Business Council dinner, the last annual dinner, right? Correct? Okay, Orange County Business Council is headquartered in Irvine, my district. The dinner was at the Hotel Irvine, my district. You went and had a role at that dinner. You didn't call and ask me permission. Is the OCBC regional?
This is a
Yes, of
region,
course.
this is a
Okay.
region-wide. OCBC is throughout Orange County.
Yeah.
Okay, so that meets
Okay.
the regional
Well,
definition.
they represent all of Orange County, all 34 cities. But
Ah.
I'll give you an example of where, for instance, you and I have worked cooperatively, and it turned out very well. So we had the FAA Metroplex issue. And Supervisor Spitzer has the planes coming in over his district. I have the planes kind of taking off over the ocean, they coming over my district. And we decided to jointly host an FAA Metroplex forum and work together on putting that together. And it turned out very well. We had about 500 people in attendance. But that's an example of cooperating, communicating, collaborating together, and coming together as two supervisors in a particular supervisorial district and working together on something that turned out to be a great forum. And I'd like to see more of that, but it should be with communication and cooperation and collaboration. That makes a huge difference.
Do we feel like we have any kind of reasonable basis to make the distinction in order to satisfy this, or are we wasting our time here, colleagues? Because we can sit here and split hair until the cows come home. And
can I
I don't
just
know
say
what we
something?
accomplish here.
I mean-
But it's necessary for this issue to be discussed publicly, openly at least, between the five of us.
I don't have any problem with that, but I've given you a lot of examples of distinction about you all doing things in my district unequivocally, and they involve land use and all kinds of important issues. And the fact of the matter is, we sit on regional boards. We make regional decisions. It requires relationships with other people. I've been doing this for 25 years in this county, and a lot of us have a lot of relationships which we cultivate, and those relationships are what allow us to get things done. It was exactly that level of relationships with cities, and I'm the remember, I'm the designee on the ACCOC, so I have relationships and work with a lot of those cities like you do. I'm not differentiating myself. But the fact is that you're saying Aliso Viejo is not regional, TET's regional. The Orange County Vets, Supervisor Nelson at least acknowledged, he went there, put up a tent, gave stuff out, didn't ask anybody permission. So I don't know how you draw a definition of what you can and cannot do. I can tell you this to your point because you want an answer on number 2. I do believe that there's nothing anybody can do in any way whatsoever to restrict another elected official from going in and speaking like any other member of the public. You can't restrict another elected official or member of the public from speaking on the public record at anywhere in this county or in this world, quite frankly. But staff, I'll grant you that I don't have a problem if you want to say during normal business hours, what my staff does on their own time after hours, like Laguna Niguel, that's after hours. They're not restricted. They're not on the payroll. So if a staff member wants to accompany me, that meeting was like at 7 o'clock at night. They're not on the payroll. And I will just put this on the record about the professional courtesy, Lisa. I brought to your attention when you said, well, would you just let me know? And I said, sure. And then I went to an event, and my registration packet had been taken out, and it was gone. And I brought that to your attention, that my registration packet had been taken.
Registration packet for what?
At Doheny Blues. It was gone.
Oh, I did not know that.
I told you about it with Victor in the room. And so when we do try to reach out and try to cooperate to let you know, hey, I'm doing the Drowning Prevention Task Force, I have a booth, you have any problem, we're registering, we're full disclosure, and then our registration packet disappeared and we ended up finding out how, then I got a problem with that. So if you want to have like notice and cooperation, that's a professional courtesy.
Okay.
But don't try to inhibit, then once somebody gives you a professional courtesy, don't try to inhibit behind the scenes.
All right, it doesn't sound like we have any direction here, so I'm going to just terminate the discussion. And no action is taken at this time. I just end with one observation. As I have mentioned before, there's really very little that we can do to each other up here. We're all equal power. We're all part of the same body. The harm that we inflict on ourselves by refusing to follow protocol, to adhere to something higher than just our selfish interest at the moment, hurts all of us. And to the degree that we feel free to just change and say different things today, and when confronted with things, we just challenge the factual basis of what people are saying, hey, it seems like that's the way of today, right? When you're confronted with something, just deny it and then challenge the integrity of the person saying it. So it's not going to get anywhere. I knew going in that we weren't going to be very successful. This kind of hair splitting will take place, and so frankly, we can't legislate human behavior. There are too many scenarios that we can't possibly come up with a way to legislate all of the behavior. So, but it's important that we at least put it out on the record, so now we know there is no district prerogative, and we'll do whatever we want, okay, at this point. So that's clear, and we move on from here.